At my brother's wedding, I was told to stay near the wall so I wouldn't ruin the family photos. My seat was taken by the plus one of his fiance's cousin. I walked over to the gift table, picked up my envelope, and said, "Don't worry, I'll stay out of the frame forever." He came running after me as I left. My name is Marcos, and I'm 30 years old. If you asked anyone in my family who the quiet one is, they'd point to me. I'm not the type to yell at dinner or compete for attention. I don't rock the boat. I listen more than I speak. I don't make scenes, not even when I probably should. It's just never been my style. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that people like that, the quiet ones, are often underestimated. And sometimes, we're the ones who remember everything. My brother, Alvaro, is 2 years younger than me, and when we were growing up, our dynamic was just what you'd expect between two boys close in age, chaotic, but close. We shared a room until I left for university. We had our backyard brawls, and we also covered for each other when things went sideways with our parents. But everything changed after university. Alvaro went into sales and went all in on the image, tailored suits, a leased BMW, and a social media profile full of gym selfies and motivational quotes he didn't even follow. I preferred to keep a low profile. I finished my engineering degree, moved to a quieter city, and built a solid life that I didn't feel the need to brag about. We still talked, but there was always something strange, as if he kept me around more out of obligation than affection. When he got engaged to Noelia, a woman I'd seen exactly twice, I was genuinely happy for him, even though she seemed like the type who says things like, "We're so blessed as a couple," and acted like my job designing structural components for wind turbines was less impressive than Alvaro selling luxury mattresses. I really tried. I RSVP'd the same day I received the invitation. I offered to help with any technical or setup issues at the venue. They politely responded and brushed me aside. I even transferred €250 via Bizum for the joint bachelor/bachelorette weekend, which I wasn't even invited to. The wedding was at a winery an hour outside the city, rustic, but expensive, very much their style. I rented a suite, booked a room in a nearby hotel, and brought a thoughtfully chosen gift, a card with a check for €1,600. It wasn't just generous, it was significant. I didn't have that money to spare. I had saved it little by little, wanting to contribute something meaningful because I truly believed this should be a big moment for my brother. Driving there, I was nervous, not because of the event itself, but because something in my gut told me the day wasn't going to go well. When I arrived at the venue, I saw the seating chart placed on a small easel near the entrance. I looked for my name. Once. Nothing. Again. Nothing. One more time. Nothing. Thinking it was a mistake, I went inside and approached one of the wedding organizers, a young woman wearing hair clips and a walkie-talkie. "Hi, excuse me," I said softly. "I can't find my name on the chart." "Marcos Reynolds." She looked at me, clearly exhausted, and then glanced at her guest list. "Marcos. You're Alvaro's brother, right?" Her tone changed, as if she suddenly realized something uncomfortable. "Yes, there were some last-minute changes. I think you're assigned to the west wall. There are some free seats near the photo booth." The west wall. I blinked. That wasn't even a table. It was next to the speakers where they'd stacked folding chairs as an afterthought. Still thinking it must be a mistake, I walked over there. Then I saw it. The only seat with a place card that seemed to have been intended for me had a sign, but not with my name. It read Tiffany +1. I didn't even know who Tiffany was, but there she was, already sipping champagne in the spot I'd assumed was mine, laughing with a group of people I barely recognized. Trying to stay calm, I approached my mother, who was adjusting the boutonniere on my father's jacket. "Hi," I said, trying to sound natural. "Do you know what's going on with the seating?" She didn't even look up. "Oh, yes, Noelia's family brought more people than expected, and they've come from so far. We didn't want to move them. Stay by the wall during the ceremony. You'll see everything anyway." "The wall," I repeated a little louder than I should have. My father gave me a look as if I was making a scene. It's not a big deal, my mother said, waving me away. Just don't ruin the photos by sulking. I wasn't sulking. I was stunned. And then came the final blow. Noelia's voice, bright and sharp, sounded behind me. "Oh, good. You found a spot," she said, without even waiting for a response. "We're just trying to keep the family photos clean, you know?" I don't know what my face looked like, but it must have said everything I was trying not to express, because she quickly added, "It's nothing personal. You'll be in the reception photos, I promise." I nodded, my lips pressed together. She walked away with her entourage of bridesmaids. There's a kind of humiliation that isn't accompanied by shouts or tears. It's a slow, hollow ache in your chest, the realization that you're not welcome in a place where you should be. I stood there, motionless, for a minute, trying to swallow it all down. But then my eyes drifted to the gift table, a linen-covered surface near the cake, piled high with pastel-wrapped boxes and elegant envelopes. Mine was easy to identify, matte silver with my handwriting, meticulously tied with a thin ribbon. I had closed that envelope with such care. I even tucked a note inside, saying how proud I was of Alvaro and how much I hoped the money would help them start their new chapter. I didn't even think. I went straight there, bent down, and calmly retrieved it. Nobody stopped me or even noticed at first, until I turned towards the door and someone, maybe one of the groomsmen, yelled, "Hey, Marcos. Where are you going?" I didn't stop. I just looked over my shoulder, lifted the envelope, and said, "Don't worry, I'll stay out of the frame forever." I was almost at the exit when I heard Alvaro's voice behind me. "Marcos, wait." I stopped walking, but didn't turn around. I was right by the large double doors that led to the gravel parking lot, one hand on the polished brass handle, the other clutching the envelope like it was the only solid thing keeping me upright. "Marcos," Alvaro repeated, closer now. His shoes crunched softly on the ground behind me. "Come on, man. Don't do this. It's not that big a deal." I turned slowly and for the first time in years, really looked at him. He was there, in his designer tuxedo, the buttons slightly askew, the champagne flute still bubbling in his left hand. He had a look of bewilderment, as if I was the one making a scene, as if he hadn't just relegated his own brother to a folding chair next to the photo booth because Noelia's cousin had brought an extra guest. "It's not that big a deal," I repeated quietly. "Yes," he said, shrugging and lowering his voice a bit, as if he didn't want the other guests to hear. "It's just the seat, man. It's not like we kicked you out." And Noelia's family, man, they flew in from, I don't know, Seville or something. We had to make room. I let out a short laugh, but it wasn't humorous. "And so I get to sit in a corner and hope nobody asks if I'm the DJ? Dude, don't be dramatic. It's just one day. Do you really have to make this all about you?" That was the sentence that hit me. Make this all about me. For years, I'd shown up at birthdays, parties, family barbecues. I was always the one sending cards, the one remembering anniversaries, the one staying late to help clean up while Alvaro disappeared, saying he had to take a call. I never made anything about me. And maybe that was the problem. Maybe they had gotten so used to me not taking up space that the idea of me needing a chair, a single, literal chair, was suddenly too much. "I flew here," I said slowly. "I rented a hotel. I bought a suit. I gave you 1,600 euros. We're giving." He corrected, gesturing at the envelope. "Right," I replied. But then I realized something. "Today, I'm not really your brother. I'm just background decor." His jaw tightened. "You're exaggerating. So much." I didn't reply. He was the one exaggerating. He just didn't think I'd notice. He sighed, rubbed his temples. "Look, it was Noelia's decision, okay? She wanted the photos to be her inner circle. Clean lines. Coordinated colors. That kind of thing." "Did she do a background check to see who had photogenic bone structure?" I asked. He didn't answer. And maybe he knew he shouldn't. "You know," I said finally, walking towards him again. I didn't expect to be the center of attention, a toast, a dance, a mention. I just expected a seat. A place somewhere in the corner that said, "You matter enough to be here, like everyone else." "You matter," he muttered, like it pained him to say it. "Then why didn't you show it?" His eyes flicked to the room. The guests were openly staring now. The photographer had stopped mid-shot. Oscar the DJ had turned the volume down slightly. Alvaro didn't like this kind of attention. You could see it on his face. He wanted the day to be perfect, curated, Instagrammable. And now it wasn't. Not because I'd thrown a tantrum, but because I'd refused to disappear quietly. "Look," he said through gritted teeth, "if this is about the money." I cut him off. "It's about respect. And today, it's become clear how little of it I have from you." He opened his mouth as if to protest, but nothing came out. Just a frustrated sigh. "I'm leaving," I said, clutching the envelope. "But don't worry. I'll make sure the photos are perfect. No awkward older brother in the background ruining the symmetry." I left before he could answer. The gravel crunched under my shoes as I walked to the car. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just sat behind the wheel for a moment, watching the vineyard recede in the rearview mirror. It was surreal, like I'd just walked out of a movie where I hadn't even been assigned the role of supporting actor, just an extra who'd wandered too close to the shot. Back at the hotel, I changed out of the suit, packed my things, and opened the envelope I'd retrieved. I took out the note I'd written, the one where I said how proud I was of him, the one where I wished the money would help them start a new chapter. I read it once, then tore it in half. Then I turned off my phone. It didn't stay off long. An hour later, when I turned it back on, I had 6 missed calls from Alvaro, 4 from my mother, and a chain of increasingly anxious messages. The last one was from Noelia. It just said, "You really ruined everything today." And that was the moment the guilt stopped. That sentence, the way she phrased it, as if I had destroyed her carefully filtered little fantasy, made something in me finally click into place. I hadn't ruined anything. I'd exposed it. But that wasn't the end. Not by a long shot. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel before dawn. Sylvia, the receptionist, barely looked up when I dropped off the room key, which was fine by me because I wasn't up for small talk. I grabbed a stale croissant from the breakfast buffet, tossed it on the passenger seat, and drove out of that wine town like it owed me money. By the time I got back to my apartment, I had 11 more missed calls and 2 voicemails I had zero interest in listening to. The tone of my mother's messages had shifted dramatically, going from "you shouldn't have left" to "oh, please call your brother. He's devastated," until it landed on the message that actually made me laugh. "Family sometimes means making sacrifices, Marcos." Sacrifices. I sat on my couch, still in yesterday's jeans, rereading that sentence. It sounded like something ripped off a gas station fridge magnet. What exactly had Alvaro sacrificed? His wedding photos were still exactly how he wanted them. His wife was still going to post them with captions like #blessed and "our fairy tale begins." He was still going to have the curated experience he craved, minus a brother who apparently clashed with the color palette. And here's the thing, I had already made the sacrifices. They just never noticed. For the past year and a half, I had been quietly helping Alvaro with his startup, a mattress import business that was, frankly, hemorrhaging money. It wasn't something that was publicly known, but when he first launched it, he called me in a panic because he needed someone to co-sign a loan. It wasn't for a house or a car. It was to rent a warehouse and sign an inventory contract. I didn't ask for anything in return. I thought, he's my brother. If it goes well, we all win. If it goes bad, at least he tried. And yes, maybe a part of me hoped that helping him now would finally be seen as something more than just Marcos being the reliable one. I never told our parents, not even my friends. It was something I just managed quietly. I made sure the payments were made on time, fielded a few calls from the bank when things got tight, and even wired him €3,500 in an emergency last fall when his supplier nearly pulled out. All of that without receiving more than a curt "thanks bro" text. That check I retrieved from the gift table wasn't just a wedding present. It was my way of drawing a line. But now, sitting in my apartment, surrounded by unopened mail and half-dead plants, I realized something more profound. They hadn't just forgotten my seat at the wedding. They'd forgotten my role entirely. So, I got to work. I opened my files, every email thread, every signed document, every bank statement related to the loan. I was still the guarantor, which meant I still had administrative access. The loan wasn't close to being paid off, and although I hadn't made any legal claim on the company, I had leverage. I didn't want to destroy him. I really didn't. But something about Noelia's "you really ruined everything today" text echoed in my head like a challenge, like their perfectly assembled world couldn't handle even a sliver of reality. Like my quiet support for the past 18 months was worth less than how I looked in the background of their Instagram carousel. I composed a simple email. Clean. Legally sound. It notified the bank that for personal and financial reasons, I was formally withdrawing as guarantor and ceasing to authorize any use of my credit or identity in the company's operations. I attached the relevant forms. I copied Alvaro's email, and I hit send. And just in case, I forwarded some key documents to a lawyer friend from university, Andres, in case things got ugly. Not because I expected a fight, but because Alvaro was impulsive and Noelia, let's just say, I didn't trust someone who referred to wedding centerpieces as brand assets. An hour later, my phone vibrated. It was a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Then it vibrated again. This time it was Alvaro. I answered. His voice was tense, clipped. "You just withdrew from the loan?" "Yes." "Why?" "I'm getting married now." I replied coldly. "It's time you stood on your own 2 feet." There was a pause. "Marcos, come on. This isn't the time to be petty." I could hear it. The frustration he was trying to control, the tone of someone who still believed he was the reasonable one in the conversation, that I was just overreacting, that it would all blow over, like one of his many overdue invoices. "This isn't pettiness," I said. "It's fair. Are you seriously doing this over a chair?" I didn't reply. "Over a pattern?" And the chair was just the last straw. He exhaled sharply. Okay. Let's talk. We'll fix it." "How?" "When did you fix where I sat? Or how you made everyone understand I didn't matter enough to be in the photos? Or how you let your new wife treat me like an inconvenience?" Silence. "You didn't even ask if I was okay when I left," I added. "You didn't look for me. You called because now you need something from me." More silence. And then, quieter, "Is this permanent?" "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "It depends on you." And I hung up. I didn't feel triumphant or satisfied. I felt tired, like I'd just cleaned up a mess that wasn't mine but had been left for me anyway. A mess that had been accumulating for years. Unspoken slights. Ignored moments. Quiet betrayals that no one thought I'd notice. What I didn't know yet was that Alvaro wasn't the only one shaken by what I'd done. The ripple effect had already started. Noelia's father, Don Federico, a silent investor in Alvaro's company, had questions. My mother was now organizing a family mediation dinner. And my inbox was about to be flooded with messages from cousins who, apparently, had also been blindsided by Noelia's guest list changes. But I'll tell that shortly, because the moment that really changed everything, the tipping point where awkward family drama became an all-out fracture, came 3 days later. I got a Facebook message from my cousin, Teresa. We were never particularly close, but we'd grown up sharing the same chaotic Christmas dinners and more than a few knowing glances. Her message was short. "Hey, were you also asked to not be in the family photos?" That word, also, stopped me cold. That night we talked on the phone. Teresa had been seated at the furthest table, next to the portable heaters. Her husband didn't even get a place card. Apparently, Noelia had sent a guest flow update to Clara, the wedding coordinator, 2 nights before the event, rearranging the seating to optimize the aesthetic. Translation: anyone over 30, unphotogenic, or not fitting the TikTok vibe, to the back. And it wasn't just Teresa. She'd already spoken to 2 other cousins, one who drove 6 hours and wasn't even offered a drink, and another who gifted a €500 espresso machine from the wedding registry, only to be placed behind a hedge. The more she investigated, the more she found. Half of the Reynoso side of the guest list had been displaced in favor of Noelia's influencer circle, distant relatives from her mother's Pilates classes, and people who fit the vibe. The wedding wasn't a celebration, it was a photo shoot sponsored by Blush. Teresa ended the call by saying, "I don't think I'm exaggerating, but I genuinely feel like we were used as filler. Background extras. Like they were embarrassed to have family there." I assured Teresa she wasn't exaggerating. That night, I looked at Noelia's Instagram. The photos were rolling in. Alvaro looked like a cologne model. Noelia, a bridal influencer. The captions were as empty as I imagined. The day our forever began. I swiped through dozens of images. Not one with our family. Not even the parents. Not even Alvaro's actual best man, replaced by someone more photogenic. Then I saw it clearly. They hadn't just disrespected me. They redesigned the entire family to fit a brand. And they thought no one would say anything. The next day, I called my parents. My mother answered, speakerphone on. I was polite. Asked how they were. How was the reception? I could sense the distance. Finally, she said, "Marcos, I wish you hadn't. You embarrassed your brother." Did he tell you where they sat me? Silence. I think it was a misunderstanding. You should have said something privately. Because of the photos, really. I'm tired of pretending I wasn't sidelined. I told them about Teresa, about the other cousins. People too polite to protest, but not blind. My father said Noelia organized most of it. I agreed. But Alvaro allowed it. That's what no one is saying. My mother tried to justify it. Weddings are stressful. Couples make mistakes. They're not going to fix it, I interrupted. They don't think they've done anything wrong. And then I told them about the loan. Dead silence. What did you say? My father asked. I co-signed Alvaro's warehouse loan 18 months ago. I've been paying for it since then. I never mentioned it. I did it quietly because I thought that's how family acts. I withdrew. I notified the bank. He's on his own now. You're sabotaging him, my father said. No. I'd just stopped protecting him. That afternoon, Don Federico, Noelia's father, called me. He wanted explanations about the loan. I told him about my withdrawal. I wish you had spoken to me first, he said. Me too, I replied. In 48 hours, everything exploded. Alvaro called 3 times. Angry, regretful, then confused. He wanted to start over. I didn't. That Friday, I received an invitation. Not to another wedding. To a brunch organized by Teresa. Cousins. Coffee. No filters, no hierarchy. We shared stories. We laughed. We cried. One cousin had flown in with their place card, just to be present. At the end, Teresa looked at me and said, "Thank you for walking out. We all thought it. Only you did it." That stayed with me. It would have been easier to stay quiet. To smile for the camera from a chair in the back. But this time, I stood up. Not for revenge. For dignity. 3 weeks later, Alvaro wrote me a letter. I keep it next to the torn note from the €1,600 check. He didn't say sorry, but he did write, "I thought avoiding conflict was peace. Now I see it was ignoring you. I was wrong. I haven't replied. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. But I know this. I'm not the invisible brother anymore. I'm Marcos." And this time I stayed in the frame.